Well, hello, everyone. This is Dawn Mathis. Welcome to Your Greatness with Dawn Mathis. And we have a guest with us today. Her name is Teri Ward. And the title of today's podcast is Love, Loss, and Living Again. So I just wanted to give a little bit of history about Teri. But first, Teri, welcome to the podcast. We're so glad you could join us.
Thank you, Dawn. I feel honored to be here.
Well, we're honored to have you. So, when Teri was just 8 years old, her father committed suicide at home. The family then moved, and Teri became close to her uncle, and then just 6 months later, he passed away. And by the time Teri was 30 years old, she had lost all of her family except her sisters. After the recent death of her husband, Teri became a facilitator for grief groups with True Hospice and community care. She has begun speaking on the topic of how to turn loss into life lessons. Immediately after the recent Boulder mass shooting, Teri actually led a grief support group, several support groups through True Community Care for both the community members and for the grief volunteers from True. Teri has 3 daughters scattered around the world in London, Melbourne, Australia, and Portland, Oregon. Traveling to visit them is one of her true loves in life. And for fun, doesn't sound like fun to me, but anyway, Teri participates in triathlons and has done many sprint and Olympic races at ITU Worlds, as well as 6 half Ironmans and 2 full Ironmans. Wow. Whew. Lots going on in your life.
Yes.
So, speak to us about, boy, you've just had a lot of loss. And I was just wondering, how do you think this has affected you and your life path?
Well, I would say that one of the things that's happened through these losses, that I built a real deep foundation of resilience. And, that's not a word that we used to use very often, but it's becoming quite more common to talk about the importance of resilience and our resilience. And I feel like I've had that most of my life, but, I didn't know it. And I think that when you're young, you don't realize that what these experiences are abnormal or different, or, they're just, I know the first time I felt a difference from others was when I was in Girl Scouts and they had a father-daughter dinner dance, and I didn't have a father to take me. And so that was a little bit like, oh, wow, all of the other girls in the troop all have a father, So I think that was the first time I sensed kind of that my experiences had been different. But it wasn't until Dawn, I was in my probably mid to late 20s that I started looking into healing from all of this loss that had been in my life. And that was even prior to having lost my mom, which she passed. I had my first baby at 29, and then 6 months later, well, no, not quite, a little more than 6 months, my mom died. And so that was just another major loss for me. And that's when I knew that, wow, I need to start understanding this and getting some help for myself. And I did that through therapy, through different groups that offer, grief support, and also because my mother had been, alcoholic and had been on prescription drugs I also went to a really good, it's called Adult Children of Alcoholics. So it's run in a 12-step group fashion. And that I found very helpful.
One of the things, Teri, that you had said to me in our correspondence back and forth in preparation for today was that you learned that you cannot hope to live a happy, fulfilling life if you don't experience your grief. Would you say that was one of the toughest, hardest earned lessons that you gleaned from all of your loss?
Yes, absolutely, Donna. I think that, and having now been trained to facilitate groups and help others, that's one of the areas where people can get stuck. It's hard work, and people, we don't like hard work sometimes, especially when it's looking inward. And absolutely, it takes time, and it takes self-compassion. You really have to have a lot of compassion and love for yourself, and hold yourself in loving kindness so that you can do the work that you need to do to get beyond just the initial stages of grief and really be able to, as they say in the dark night of the soul, to get beyond and then to see the gift that might have been provided in that processing and experience.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you about the dark night of the soul because you and I have had a lot of the same training. We're both life coaches, and that is one of the curricula that you and I both teach and coach into is the hero's journey, the dark night of the soul. What can you... about that dark night, what can you tell the listeners who might be in the initial stages of having lost someone they love? What can you tell them to do with that dark night?
When you're in it, it's, after Chuck, my husband, passed, when people would say, oh, you'll grow from this. My response, Dawn, was like, I would rather not. I would rather have kept my husband and had that relationship and not grown. But after, he passed to a year and a half now. And I'm just so grateful for all that I did have. A lot of people, we didn't meet until we were 60. Now, a lot of people wouldn't think that that's an age, to fall in love and have this wonderful romantic relationship. And yet we did. And we shared so many interests. And so, but it wasn't, I actually call that initial phase the day I joined the zombie apocalypse, because that's what it felt like to me, that I was just a zombie, that I had no, I was just in a total brain fog. I had no awareness of what was really going on around me. I remember at one grief group that I was participating in, I was talking about I'd become fearful of cooking on my gas stove because I kept leaving the gas on, especially if I had the burner on low. So you don't really have the visual awareness of the flame so much. And somebody shared with me, well, turn on the oven, the light above the stove. Whenever you turn on the burner, turn on the light so that then if you forget, you'll see the light on, and it's that kind. You can really be in the dark night can be very dark, and it can take a while, and every person is different. Every person experiences grief differently. And in fact, each type of grief is different. Each relationship you have and lose. And, you can have grief even without the death of a loved one. It could be just, a divorce, or, you can be experiencing grief through the loss of your job, or the loss of a sense of security in some way in your life. So grief can come on in a lot of different areas. But I think that it takes time. And again, it takes doing your processing so that you can start to see what happened that you can call good in it.
What would you say as a person who has experienced so much grief and so much loss? I know for other people who are well-meaning that they don't know what to say or do, so sometimes they don't say or do anything, or say or do something that's very unskilled. What do you think, with your own experience and with your training now as a grief coach, what can you tell those of us who are wanting to be supportive to someone who is grieving? What are some of the strategies that we can use so that we don't feel so useless?
Well, before COVID, I would say hug. Just hug people.
Yeah.
Just hold people. That is so important. And I grew up in the South, so food, take food. And that, it's interesting because I always, as a child, I didn't understand that ritual. I mean, food would just appear out of nowhere and it'd be all over the dining room table. And sometimes it can be too much. And so I would say, is there a meal that you don't have food for, instead of just assuming? And it's really helpful. I found frozen, or things that could easily be frozen, to be great, because it could be weeks or months down the road when you really need that nourishment that you're not getting. But as far as saying things, as I just said in the previous question, when, people would say things to me, I'd go, you've got to be kidding. You can't be saying that to me. But I appreciated that they were there. And I could always get past their unskillfulness just from being around. Walking with me, now it's because I am a person that likes to be outside and doing things. Walking was a big one. When people would come and either walk with me here or take me somewhere beautiful for a walk, that was so helpful. And again, I love nature. So getting me out, even a drive that was pretty, was helpful. And, just know that your caring comes through, no matter how unskillfully you may express it. The person, I think, would understand that it is hard. And just to say, I honestly don't know what to say.
Just being honest.
Yeah, just to honestly say that, because we aren't trained in it. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so interested in getting more people involved in grief work, because we don't have the skills. No one reads a book on grief until they need it, right? Well, it's not like a book on happiness.
Right. So for those of the listeners who might be experience the grief and the loss right now,
right,
what would you say to them when someone reaches out to them? What can I do to help you? What would you tell those people that are grieving? What would you tell them to how would you tell them to respond to that?
Authentically, and one of the things I learned in my training is that they actually called it the Rolodex, that some people are going to be the people that you're going to go for a walk with, and some people are going to be the people that you're going to talk to, and some people are the people you're going to cry with. And not everybody has those skills, all of those skills. So you will learn pretty early on in the process that not to expect everyone to be able to handle your tears. If you're sobbing, some people just don't know how to react to that. And they might close up because of their lack of experience and their ability to have compassion for that in the moment based on their history. And so you'll learn who to call on for each of the things, and to be really authentic with people and say what you need. But there are times when you don't know what you need. You really don't. You don't even know. And the friends that for me were so helpful would be the ones that would say, you may not need this right now, but I want you to know when you do need someone just to talk to, call me, or if you need a dinner, let me know. And a lot of people put together these support calendars. There are different apps, and you can write what you need down. You can put it in the app. Saturday night, I'm going to need a dinner, or Sunday, I'm going to need a ride. And that's one thing people don't, or didn't in my case think of. But sometimes you need a ride somewhere because you shouldn't be out there driving. And also when any of us, whether we're in grief or not, when you see someone breaking down in the grocery store, just crying, just say something to them. I can see you're having a hard time. Would you like to talk, or is there anything I can do? Because that is the one situation where almost everyone I've talked to that's been in deep grief has experienced it, especially if they're used to shopping for another person that has passed, right? Because then you see
it kind of hits you.
It does. You see their brand of ketchup, and you just break down,
Yeah.
And
You don't see it coming.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, we just unfortunately had the tragic shooting in a grocery store here too. Yes. So, right now, especially if you're anywhere around the Boulder County area, and if you have to shop in a King Soopers, a lot of people might be perhaps not grieving, but in pain when they walk in and, there's a policeman out front, because I don't know about where you live down in Denver, but here almost all the King Soopers have a local policeman out front right now. And, again, and we can't go over and hug each other because of COVID, so just words,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, what would you say might be a myth about grief that you could clear up for us today? I'm sure there's a few out there.
Yeah.
Do you have a couple that
you'd
like to bust right now?
Yeah, I didn't. I don't think I spoke to the what not to say. One of the things people, because they have had some type of loss, they'll say, "Oh, I know what you're going through." No, you don't, because we're all unique. We all experience all of our emotions, not just grief. Everything is coming from our experiences and who we are. And so even if you have had the same loss of the same relationship, try to avoid saying, I know, I know what you're going through.
The myth is that they're all the same.
Right.
Yeah,
that is correct, Dawn. They're not all the same. They're all different. Everybody, my sister's husband passed away less than a year after my husband passed away. And I went And the entire experience was different. How they had hospice, but it was different. It was different from the way we did the hospice. And everything about what they chose to do was different. And that's fine. No one way is right either. Yeah. There is no one thing. One myth, it might sound like good advice to say, don't make any major decisions in the first year. But there are some people that have to. Their financial situation may change to the extent that they have to move. That, sure, they probably don't want to when they're in the first 6 months to a year, or even perhaps before. But some people, it's not a choice. Right. So I think if you think something is a rule around the end of life experience, or how to behave after, it's not. And there are no, like I said earlier, there are no right and wrongs. So if you it's a myth because it's perhaps not experienced in the way that we expect it to be experienced, right? Mm-hmm. If someone is laughing and having a good time out doing, don't be surprised. They need that. They need to know that they can go on and continue to live.
Yeah. So a couple more questions. I'll just ask them kind of in tandem.
Okay.
So obviously you've had some very transformative milestones recently. So what I want to know is did your milestones bring about this calling for your work right now, and tell us about your new work?
Yeah, it did. It changed. It's still the same, that I want to be of service to others in helping them live life fully. But now I think there were a lot of transformations for me. I think I'm more compassionate, more caring, more patient, much more patient. Dawn, you know me. I come from a corporate background where, type A, let's chop, let's get these things done, let's move forward with your goals and your vision. And now I'm much more understanding and much more patient and caring and less judgmental if it takes somebody a long time. Because I feel like it took me a long time to really get back into living my life again. I had self-judgment around, I should be able to jump back into things more quickly, and I couldn't. You were so kind and caring when we saw each other in January 2020 to, be there for me and talk to me. And but that experience when we were in that training together, I had to leave. I took almost the whole Saturday off and went for a hike because just that, and
that's what you needed.
That's what I needed. And so, yes, it changed it. I'm also, this, but I'll tell your audience, I'm also doing mindfulness meditation teacher training with Jack Hornfield and Tara Brock, because one of the things that helped me so much was just to breathe and to learn to focus on the breath and being in the moment.
Absolutely.
And having compassion for myself that, if I wake up in the morning and the kitchen is a mess from the previous evening because I didn't do my dishes, the world's not going to
okay.
It's okay, right? So a lot of my focus now and where I'm headed as far as the training for the grief group support and meditation are all coming from the passing of my husband and then my brother-in-law, and also just this most recent loss in our community and seeing, the people who do hospice care are focused on allowing people to have their choice in end of life and being compassionate and loving in that environment. And these 10 people did not get that. And,
You're right.
And so that's
was taken away.
Yeah. So that's why True decided to facilitate. They had a lot of support available for their staff and volunteers.
That's great. So, Teri, we will have for everyone in the show notes your contact information. But what is the quickest way that someone that's listening right now can get a hold of you? Would that be on your website?
Yeah. My website is just www.dreamcompleter, all one word, DreamCompleter, dreamcompleter.com. And there's a contact me space on the website there.
That's wonderful. Boy, I wish we had 2 hours to talk about all this. This is such great information, great material.
Thank you.
I'm sure you'll probably be hearing from some of our guests, and thank you for your work in the world. And I can't wait to see you in person at a training, hopefully soon.
Or just dinner at my house. It's my turn.
Oh, there you go. It's a date. It's a date, and we'll go for a walk, and we'll watch the sunset. Because I know you have that wonderful west-facing patio that we danced on one time. I remember that.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. Well, everyone, Teri Ward, and we will have ways to get in touch with her, and she told you her website, www.dreamcompleter.com. Sorry. Woo!
Okay.
Check my work. All right. Well, thank you, Teri, for joining us. We really, really appreciate it. And to all of you listening, thank you so much for joining us today for Love, Loss, and Living Again. And we'll see you next time.